Logan Carter was 42 when the former Navy SEAL realized the last place he could call home was a 14-year-old Ford pickup. No house, no steady work, no family waiting, only a faded backpack and Rex, the 9-year-old German shepherd who had once served beside him. Then, outside Waynesville, North Carolina, Logan raised his hand at a county tax sale and bought a rusted mountain hut for just $10. Its corrugated metal walls were eaten by rust, its roof leaked, and weeds nearly swallowed it whole. Everyone else saw something ready to collapse. But hidden behind one rotting wall was a steel box, untouched for decades, containing the forgotten story of another American veteran. Logan had no idea that rebuilding this unwanted place would uncover more than a secret. It would give 2 discarded soldiers a reason to belong again. Sometimes God doesn't send a miracle wrapped like a gift. Sometimes He hides it inside the very thing everyone else has abandoned. Before we continue, subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to see how far Logan and Rex's journey reaches. Spring sunlight spilled across the Blue Ridge Mountains outside Waynesville, North Carolina, turning the young leaves bright green while the cool morning air carried the clean scent of pine, damp earth, and distant mountain streams. Logan Carter woke behind the steering wheel of a 14-year-old Ford pickup with his neck aching and one hand resting instinctively near Rex. At 42, Logan still had the broad shoulders and powerful frame of the U.S. Navy SEAL he had once been. He stood 6'1", though an old injury gave his left leg a slight limp. Short, dark brown hair had begun turning gray at the temples, and a neatly trimmed beard connected to his mustache framed a weathered, angular face. His blue-gray eyes rarely revealed much anymore. Tanned skin and a small scar through his left eyebrow completed the appearance of a man who had spent too many years beneath harsher skies. He wore the same practical civilian clothes most days. A red plaid flannel shirt beneath a worn brown canvas jacket, gray t-shirt, dark blue jeans, brown leather belt, and scuffed brown hiking boots. A scratched military watch remained on his wrist. His faded backpack and steel toolbox occupied what little space the truck had left. Rex slept curled on the passenger side. The 9-year-old German shepherd had a black and tan sable coat with a dark saddle across his back. Intelligent amber eyes, a muzzle beginning to silver, and a small scar on the tip of his left ear. A worn brown leather collar circled his neck. Age had slowed him slightly, but nothing had weakened the habit of watching Logan. They had first become partners in 2012. By 2017, Rex knew Logan's moods almost as well as Logan knew Rex's footsteps. That final year had taken nearly everything else. Daniel Reed had been Logan's closest friend in the team, a lean, dark-haired man in his late 30s with a crooked nose, dry humor, and the irritating ability to make people laugh when nobody wanted to. Marcus Hill was broader, clean-shaven and quiet, with warm brown eyes and a patient nature that made younger men seek him out whenever fear became too embarrassing to admit. Both died during Logan's final deployment. Rex nearly came the 3rd loss. When the order came to withdraw after a disastrous mission, Rex was injured and trapped. Logan remembered being told there was no time. He remembered ignoring it. He remembered going back through confusion and debris until he found Rex unable to free himself. Logan carried the wounded dog out, despite the injury tearing through his own leg. "No one gets left behind," he had whispered against Rex's fur. 2 years later, those words sometimes felt like a cruel joke. Civilian life had not exploded around Logan. It had simply eroded. His injured leg made physical jobs increasingly difficult. The marriage already damaged by long absences and the man who returned from them eventually ended. Temporary maintenance work became shorter jobs, then no jobs. Savings disappeared into rent, food, fuel, and ordinary bills that possessed no sympathy for decorated service. By early 2019, the apartment was gone. The Ford became home, Logan told himself homelessness was temporary. He kept his clothes folded. He shaved when he could. He never let Rex miss a meal even when his own dinner consisted of crackers and gas station coffee. Pride survived in strange places. What frightened Logan most was not poverty. It was becoming accustomed to it. One cold night outside Waynesville, Logan parked beneath a stand of trees and fell asleep after midnight. Rex settled beside him. Hours later, Rex's head snapped upward. Something smelled wrong. The German Shepherd sniffed toward the dashboard. A faint electrical odor sharpened into smoke. Rex barked once. Logan didn't move. Rex barked again, louder, then pushed his muzzle hard against Logan's shoulder. When that failed, he pawed at Logan's chest. Logan woke coughing. Gray smoke was curling from beneath the dashboard. "Rex, out!" He shoved open the door, sent Rex outside, then reached beneath the steering column and disconnected the power as quickly as trembling fingers allowed. The smoke thickened briefly before beginning to fade. Logan stumbled onto the roadside and sat in the grass. For several seconds, he simply breathed. Then Rex pressed against him. Logan wrapped both arms around the dog's neck. His forehead rested against the old shepherd's head, and something inside him broke quietly. "I went back for you once," Logan whispered. "Guess you remembered." Rex licked his chin. Logan laughed despite himself. "Yeah, very dignified." By sunrise, the mountains were glowing beneath a perfectly blue sky, while the Ford sat useless beside the road. A small local garage managed to repair the damaged wiring later that morning for little more than Logan could afford. The mechanic warned him that the truck might keep running, but sleeping inside it was becoming a dangerous habit. Logan already knew. That afternoon, he parked outside Waynesville with Rex beside him and counted what remained in his wallet. Not enough for an apartment deposit. Not enough for another vehicle. Certainly not enough for a house. Rex rested his silvering muzzle on Logan's knee. Logan stared through the windshield. He had saved Rex once. Rex had just returned the favor. But neither of them could spend another year waiting for the old Ford to decide whether it would be a bedroom, a coffin, or both. Logan reached for his faded backpack, intending to find somewhere they could safely sleep that night. Then something caught his attention. Half buried beneath several ordinary notices was a county announcement concerning unwanted properties outside Waynesville. Logan almost walked past it. Almost. Because nothing listed there should have been affordable to a homeless man. Yet, at the bottom of the page was a number so absurd that Logan stopped and read it twice. $10. The county notice led Logan Carter to a modest government building on the edge of Waynesville the following morning, with Rex waiting beside the Ford beneath a bright Carolina sky. The announcement was for a county delinquent tax sale, a collection of unwanted parcels whose owners had stopped paying taxes long enough for the county to complete the required process. Logan had no intention of buying anything. $10 might have appeared on the notice, but experience had taught him that numbers usually grew teeth once a man got close enough. The sale drew fewer than 20 people. Most looked like local contractors or landowners hoping to acquire cheap acreage. Logan stayed near the back, his worn brown canvas jacket hanging open over his red plaid flannel shirt, feeling painfully aware that everything he owned was either on his body, in his backpack, or inside the Ford. The county clerk conducting the sale was Walter Hayes, a 63-year-old man with thinning silver hair, a narrow weathered face, pale skin, and rectangular glasses that continually slipped down his nose. Walter was tall, but slightly stooped. With the careful patience of someone who had spent decades explaining government paperwork to people already angry about it. He spoke plainly, without the theatrical rhythm of an auctioneer. Several parcels sold quickly. Then Walter reached the last page. Parcel 47 to C. Mountain tract outside Waynesville. End of an unmaintained access road, approximately 1 acre. Someone chuckled. Walter glanced over his glasses. Existing structure is being conveyed as is. Structure? A heavy-set man near the front said. That's generous. More laughter followed. Walter ignored it and lifted a photograph. From where Logan stood, he could see a small rectangular hut, nearly swallowed by vegetation. Its corrugated metal walls had rusted reddish-brown, sections were warped. The low roof appeared punctured in several places, and the door hung crookedly from its frame. Last recorded occupant died approximately 10 years ago. Walter continued. No qualifying heir completed a claim. Statutory redemption period has expired. County title process is complete. Minimum bid is $10. Nobody moved. Logan stared at the photograph. $10. He had spent more than that on bad coffee during particularly long nights. The heavy-set man turned halfway around. County ought to pay somebody $10 to take it. This time even Walter smiled. Logan did not. He thought about the Ford filling with smoke. He thought about waking each morning somewhere he wasn't supposed to remain. He thought about Rex growing older in passenger seats in parking lots. $10, Logan said. The room became quiet before someone laughed. Walter looked toward the back. Sir, you understand this is an as-is parcel? I understand. No maintained utilities are represented. Access is poor. Existing structure may require substantial rehabilitation or removal. I heard you. Walter waited. Nobody offered 11. A few minutes later, Logan signed paperwork with the same scratched military watch visible at his wrist and handed over $10. Walter explained the deed and county records carefully, making certain Logan understood that ownership did not magically exempt him from building, sanitation, or safety requirements. When Logan walked outside, Rex raised his head from beside the truck. Congratulations, Logan murmured. We're landowners. Rex sneezed. That's about the reaction I expected. By mid-afternoon, they found the access road. The Ford managed most of it before a fallen limb and deep ruts persuaded Logan not to gamble with the truck's aging suspension. He parked, shouldered his faded backpack, took his steel toolbox, and continued on foot with Rex. The Appalachian forest opened gradually around them. Sunlight filtered through young spring leaves, birds moved through the canopy, and distant Blue Ridge slopes rose beneath an almost impossibly clear sky. Then Logan saw what $10 bought. The hut was worse than the photograph. Waist-high weeds surrounded corrugated metal walls eaten orange-brown with rust. Several panels bowed outward. 3 holes were visible in the roof. One small window had gone cloudy with age. The crooked door moved slightly whenever the mountain breeze reached it. Rex stopped. His ears rose. Yeah, Logan said. I'm having second thoughts too. Rex approached first. The old shepherd sniffed along the weeds, circled the exterior, then disappeared through the doorway. Logan followed quickly and found him investigating a single dark room littered with leaves, old mouse nests, broken boards, and pieces of rusted metal. Sunlight entered through the roof in 3 narrow columns. Rex finally returned to the doorway and sat. Logan looked at him. What? Rex stared back. I know it's bad. The dog's tail struck the floor once. Logan laughed. The sound surprised him. He spent the remaining daylight making the place merely survivable. He swept one corner with a branch broom improvised from what he found outside, removed anything sharp enough to injure Rex, and covered the driest section of floor with a tarp from the truck. He could do nothing about the walls yet. Night transformed every weakness into an accusation. Cold air slipped through gaps in the corrugated metal. The roof groaned whenever the wind crossed it. Logan lay inside his sleeping bag, while Rex rested against his side. Eventually, exhaustion won. Then Logan was somewhere else. Daniel was shouting through dust. Marcus was farther away. Rex was trapped. Logan tried to move toward them, but his injured leg would not obey. He heard Daniel call his name once. Then nothing. Logan woke violently, reaching into darkness. His breathing came too quickly. For several seconds, he did not know where he was. Then something warm pressed against his chest. Rex. The German shepherd had moved close and rested his silvering muzzle over Logan's ribs. He remained perfectly still. Logan placed a trembling hand against Rex's neck. "I'm here," he whispered, although he wasn't certain which of them he was reassuring. Outside, the wind passed through the trees. Through one hole in the roof, Logan could see a small patch of stars. He looked around at the rust, the broken boards, and the walls nobody else had wanted. The hut had been abandoned. So had he, in ways more complicated than paperwork could describe. But beside him, Rex breathed slowly in the darkness. Logan closed his eyes again. Tomorrow he would find out whether the place could be repaired. Tonight, for the first time in months, nobody could tell them to move along. Morning arrived through the holes in the roof, 3 shafts of golden Carolina sunlight falling across the rusted floor, while the Appalachian forest outside stirred with birdsong and clean spring air. Logan Carter woke stiff but strangely rested. Rex was already awake beside him, the 9-year-old German shepherd sitting near the crooked doorway, with his black and tan coat illuminated by the morning sun. Amber eyes fixed on the woods as if he had appointed himself security chief of a property worth exactly $10. "Good neighborhood?" Logan asked. Rex glanced back. "That's reassuring." Logan ate half a granola bar, gave Rex breakfast, then opened the old steel toolbox he had carried through more moves than he cared to remember. Its contents were modest: hammer, pry bar, pliers, screwdrivers, handsaw, measuring tape, nails, and several tools accumulated during years of maintenance work after leaving the Navy. He could not rebuild the hut in a day. He could, however, make one thing better than it had been yesterday. That principle had once carried him through impossible missions. Now it applied to rotten doors. He started with the floor. 3 decades of leaves, mouse nests, dirt, and fragments of corroded metal came out by noon. Anything sharp enough to cut Rex's paws went into a separate pile. Logan then removed a loose section of corrugated metal near the entrance and used salvageable pieces to cover the worst opening in the roof. His injured leg protested every climb. He ignored it until ignoring it became stupid, then sat beneath a maple tree. Rex immediately occupied the exact patch of ground where Logan intended to place his tools. "Seriously?" The shepherd lowered his head onto his paws. "You've got an acre." Rex closed his eyes. Logan shook his head, but a smile escaped anyway. During the next several days, the hut changed by inches rather than miracles. Logan straightened the door frame enough for the door to close. He patched 2 sections of roof temporarily, cleared vegetation away from the walls, and dug a shallow drainage trench along the uphill side where rainwater had been entering the structure. Each evening, his shoulders burned and his left leg throbbed. Yet the pain felt different from the ache of sleeping in the Ford. This pain had a purpose attached to it. On the 4th morning, Logan noticed something else. Rex had been following him behind the hut repeatedly. At first, Logan assumed the shepherd had found the trail of a squirrel. But Rex wasn't behaving like a hunting dog. He moved slowly through the undergrowth, nose low, returning again and again to a cluster of moss-covered stones roughly 40 feet behind the structure. "What have you got?" Rex sniffed between the rocks. Logan crouched beside him. The earth was damp, not rain damp. The surrounding ground was already drying beneath the spring sunshine. This patch remained dark and cool, and when Logan pushed aside a layer of leaves, water glimmered beneath them. He began clearing debris by hand. Old branches came first, followed by mud, leaves, and a thick layer of silt packed between the stones. As Logan opened a narrow channel downhill, a weak trickle appeared. Rex stepped directly into it. Of course. The dog drank. Logan watched the muddy water slowly become clearer. Something tightened in his chest. A spring. Not a puddle. Not runoff trapped after rain. Water was emerging continuously between the stones. Over the next 2 days, Logan cleared the surrounding area carefully and shaped a shallow channel that allowed the spring to flow without pooling. He knew enough not to assume clear water automatically meant safe drinking water. Until it could be properly tested, he continued using bottled water for himself and Rex. Still, the discovery changed how he saw the land. Someone had known about this. The arrangement of several larger stones was too deliberate. They formed a rough border beneath decades of moss, as though hands had once cleared this same place and guided the water before neglect buried it again. Logan ran his fingers across one stone. Whoever lived here before us wasn't completely crazy. Rex looked up. Present company excluded. That afternoon, another realization arrived less gently. Rex had been sleeping beneath the maple for nearly an hour. When Logan called him, the shepherd lifted his head, but did not immediately stand. He planted his front paws, shifted his weight, then slowly pushed his hindquarters upward. For 2 seconds, his back legs were stiff. Then he walked normally. Logan said nothing. He remembered Rex at 3 years old, launching over barriers as though gravity were a rumor. He remembered the dog running beside him through years when both of them seemed indestructible. 9 wasn't ancient for a German shepherd, but it wasn't young. That evening, Logan drove into town for nails, canned food, and bottled water. He stood in the pet aisle longer than he intended, comparing prices before putting a better bag of dog food into his cart and quietly removing 2 items meant for himself. Back at the hut, he used a short length of salvaged lumber to build a wide, low step beneath the doorway. The old threshold sat awkwardly high above the uneven ground, something Logan had barely noticed until he watched Rex climb it. When he finished, Rex walked up the new step without hesitation. Logan rubbed the dog's neck. "Don't make a big deal out of it." Rex licked his wrist. "That's exactly what I said not to do." As sunset warmed the blue ridge slopes beyond the trees, Logan sat outside the hut while Rex rested beside the new step. Behind them, the recovered spring whispered over mossy stones. For years, Logan had measured survival by what he could carry when he left. Now he found himself thinking differently. A drainage trench, a repaired door, a safer step for an aging dog. Water moving again through stones someone had arranged long before Logan arrived. He looked at Rex's silvering muzzle and felt the old fear rise. The fear born from Daniel, Marcus, and too many things he had once believed would always be there. He couldn't stop time. He couldn't make Rex young again. But he could make this place easier on old legs. He could give Rex clean ground, warm shelter, good food, and something neither of them had possessed in a long while. A place from which they did not have to leave. Logan rested his hand on Rex's head. "We're staying," he said. And behind the hut, beneath 50 years of moss, the spring kept running. 3 weeks after Logan Carter bought the forgotten parcel, The rusted hut had stopped looking entirely abandoned, though nobody with reasonable standards would yet have called it a home. The roof no longer leaked in the two places Logan had managed to patch. The crooked door closed. The drainage trench carried rainwater away from the foundation. And Rex used his new wooden step with such casual entitlement that Logan suspected the dog believed the entire renovation had been undertaken for his personal comfort. The rear wall was another matter. One vertical support had rotted badly near its base. Logan discovered the damage while checking the framing behind a warped sheet of corrugated metal. Leaving it would eventually compromise that section of wall. So one bright morning, he unloaded his tools, braced the surrounding frame, and began removing the rusted panel. Rex watched from beneath the maple tree. "You could help?" The German shepherd yawned. "Outstanding work ethic." The panel resisted until Logan worked a pry bar beneath its edge. Rusted fasteners screamed loose one at a time. When the sheet finally pulled away, dust and fragments of dry wood spilled onto the ground. Logan expected rot. Instead, he found a narrow cavity between two old supports. Something dark was wedged inside. He reached carefully into the gap and pulled out a rectangular steel box wrapped in oilcloth. The cloth had become brittle with age, but it had protected the metal beneath surprisingly well. Logan carried it to the rough porch area and sat down. Rex immediately came over, sniffed the box once, then settled beside his boots. "Don't look at me. You found the water. This one's mine." Inside lay a leather-bound notebook, 7 envelopes tied together with faded twine, a black and white photograph, and an old military identification tag. Logan picked up the tag. Thomas Walker. The name meant nothing to him. Not yet. The photograph showed a young man standing beside the same hut when its corrugated walls were still mostly clean metal. Logan guessed he was around 30. Thomas Walker had been lean and wiry, with short brown hair, a narrow, angular face, deep-set eyes, sun-darkened skin, and the guarded expression of someone uncomfortable in front of a camera. He wore faded jeans, work boots, a plain work shirt, and a battered brown jacket. One leg seemed positioned slightly stiffly. Logan opened the notebook. The earliest entry was dated 1977. Thomas wrote simply. No poetry, no speeches. He had been born in 1948 and served in Vietnam while still a young man. He returned home with damage to his left leg and memories he rarely described directly. What appeared between the lines was clearer than anything he stated outright. Thomas had come back physically alive, but unable to fit comfortably into the life waiting for him. One passage stopped Logan. Thomas wrote that everyone kept telling him he was home. Yet home felt like a word describing somewhere he remembered rather than somewhere he belonged. Logan lowered the notebook. Rex slept beside him, sunlight catching the silver beginning around his muzzle. Logan knew that sentence, not the words, the feeling. After his own final deployment, people had welcomed him back with handshakes and phrases meant kindly. Good to have you home. But Daniel Reed wasn't home. Marcus Hill wasn't home. Parts of Logan had remained somewhere with them. And nobody seemed to understand why returning alive did not automatically make a man whole. He continued reading. In 1977, Thomas had purchased the unwanted mountain parcel for almost nothing. He hauled salvaged corrugated metal and timber up the rough road and built the hut largely by himself. Several entries described his injured leg swelling after long work days. Then Logan found a passage about water. Thomas had discovered an old seep behind the hut, cleared away the mud, arranged stones around it, and opened a channel downhill. Logan looked toward the trees. The spring. The moss-covered stones hadn't been accidental. Thomas's hands had arranged them more than 40 years earlier. Later entries became less frequent. Thomas repaired engines for neighbors, grew vegetables, cut firewood, and lived quietly. He mentioned acquaintances, but no wife or children. The 7 letters in the box were addressed but never stamped. Logan did not read them. Whatever Thomas had wanted to say to those people had remained private during his lifetime, and death did not automatically give a stranger permission. Near the back of the notebook, entries from 2008 appeared in shakier handwriting. Thomas mentioned his leg worsening and trips into town becoming difficult. One line said there was nobody left close enough to worry if he missed Christmas. The final entry was from early 2009. There was no dramatic farewell. Thomas simply wrote that the roof needed another patch when spring came. It apparently never did for him. Logan sat silently for a long time. County paperwork had said the last occupant died roughly 10 years earlier. Now the abandoned hut had a name attached to it. A face, a man who had repaired the same roof, walked to the same spring, and limped across the same uneven ground. Logan looked down at Rex. The shepherd opened his amber eyes. Daniel was gone. Marcus was gone. The team that once seemed permanent existed now mostly in photographs and memory. And Rex, the aging dog Logan had once carried out when leaving him behind, would have been easier. Was the last living piece of that world still waking beside him every morning? Logan rested a hand against Rex's neck. "Just you and me, buddy." Rex leaned against his leg. Logan looked back at Thomas's photograph. Until that morning, he had been repairing the hut because he needed shelter. He had considered replacing entire walls, perhaps eventually tearing down whatever proved too damaged to save. That idea no longer felt right. Thomas Walker had built something when he had nowhere else to belong. 42 years later, another wounded veteran had somehow ended up beneath the same roof. Logan carefully returned the unread letters to the steel box, but kept the notebook beside him. He would replace what had rotted, strengthen what had weakened, make the place safe. But he would preserve whatever he could, not because rust was sacred, because somebody had once refused to disappear here. Logan stood, picked up his hammer, and looked at the damaged wall differently. "We're not tearing it down," he told Rex. The dog's tail tapped the porch. Logan touched the old timber Thomas had placed there in 1977. "We're finishing it." Once Logan decided Thomas Walker's hut deserved to survive, the work stopped being temporary. Every board he measured now carried the dangerous possibility that he might still be living there years from now. He strengthened the weakest foundation points with salvaged concrete blocks, replaced corrugated panels too rusted to save, and rebuilt the worst section of roof while deliberately preserving every original piece that remained structurally sound. The hut kept its old rectangular shape and weathered metal skin, but gradually stopped behaving like something waiting to collapse. On the south side, Logan framed a modest covered work area. Inside, he built a narrow sleeping loft, installed shelving, and constructed a heavy workbench from salvaged lumber. Thomas's steel box remained protected in a dry drawer near Logan's sleeping area. Rex received his own improvement. Using leftover lumber, Logan built a low wooden bed beside the workbench, positioned so the German shepherd could watch him without lying on cold ground. Rex inspected it carefully, climbed aboard, turned around twice, and immediately went to sleep. "Glad it passed inspection," Logan said. The first outsider to notice what was happening was Ben Parker, 63, owner of a small engine repair shop closer to Waynesville. Ben was lean and slightly stooped, with short gray hair, a square sun-browned face, heavy eyebrows, and permanently grease-darkened hands. Years around machinery had cost him some hearing in his right ear, so he often tilted his head when people spoke. He had a blunt manner, but little cruelty in him. After losing his younger brother to illness several years earlier, Ben had become unusually attentive to men who seemed determined to handle everything alone. He arrived one afternoon in an aging pickup. "You're Carter?" "Depends who's asking." Ben smiled. Man with a dead mower. The riding mower in his truck had been abandoned by a customer nearly 2 years earlier. Ben had never found time to diagnose it properly, and had heard from someone in town that the stranger living at the old mountain parcel knew engines. Logan found a fouled carburetor, deteriorated fuel line, and badly corroded connection. 2 hours later, the mower coughed, rattled, and finally settled into a steady mechanical hum. Ben stared at it. "What do I owe you?" "Parts." "And labor?" Logan shrugged. "Consider it advertising." Ben looked around at the repaired hut. "You planning to stay?" Logan glanced toward Rex sleeping beside the workbench. "That's the idea." 3 days later, Ben sent someone else. Mary Collins arrived carrying the pieces of an old rocking chair. She was 68, a small, slender widow with softly lined fair skin, silver-gray hair gathered loosely at the back of her neck, and clear blue eyes that seemed to notice things without making people uncomfortable about being noticed. Her husband, George, had died 4 years earlier after 43 years of marriage. Grief had made Mary gentler rather than bitter, though she possessed the quiet stubbornness of a woman who had learned to repair her own fence, because waiting for somebody to rescue her had become impractical. "George started fixing this before he got sick," she explained. One rocker was split. 2 joints had failed. Logan ran his hand across the worn wood. "I can fix it." Mary noticed Rex. "How old?" 9. When Logan mentioned that Rex had once been a military working dog, Mary's expression changed. She did not ask what Rex had seen or what Logan had done overseas. Logan appreciated her immediately for that. He repaired the chair over 2 evenings, preserving every scar and worn place that did not compromise its strength. Mary tried to pay him more than he asked. Logan refused. The next morning she returned with a folded quilted blanket. "This isn't for you," she said. "Good. Would have hurt my feelings if you thought I needed flowers." Mary ignored him and spread the blanket over Rex's wooden bed. "For the old soldier." Rex immediately lay on it. "Traitor," Logan muttered. Mary laughed. Word traveled faster after that. A young married couple, Ethan and Claire Miller, brought up an old Chevrolet pickup that had belonged to Ethan's father. Ethan, 29, was a lanky construction laborer with sandy hair and an earnest face. Claire, 27, was a petite elementary school aide with curly brown hair and an easy smile. They were expecting their first child and could not afford the estimate a larger garage had given them. Logan found that the problem was smaller than they had been told. When Ethan nervously asked about payment, Logan named a figure barely above the part's cost. "That's not enough," Ethan said. "It's what I'm charging." A week later, a crate containing eggs, canned vegetables, and dog treats appeared outside Logan's door. More people came. Some paid cash. One man brought seasoned firewood. Someone else left tomatoes. Ben began sending repairs his shop was too busy to handle. Logan eventually took a flat piece of salvaged oak, sanded it smooth, and burned 2 words into it: Carter Workshop. He mounted the sign near the beginning of the cleared path. Something changed after that. People started arriving without broken machinery. A retired veteran stopped one afternoon and drank coffee on the porch without discussing the military at all. Another came the following week, spoke for 10 minutes, then sat quietly watching Rex sleep beneath Mary's blanket. Logan did not ask them to explain themselves. He understood that sometimes a man needed company without conversation. One evening, Logan stood at the workbench while Rex slept beside him. Through the open doorway, he could see Mary's repaired rocking chair no longer there, Ben's mower gone, and several jars of vegetables someone had left in exchange for work. The hut felt different, not newer, alive. For years, Logan had believed belonging was something a person either possessed or lost. Now he wondered whether he had misunderstood it. Perhaps belonging could be built exactly like a roof or a workbench. Not all at once, but one useful piece at a time. Rex opened one amber eye. Logan looked down at him. "Don't get comfortable." Rex stretched deeper into the blanket. Logan smiled. Outside, beneath the clear North Carolina evening sky, the wooden sign moved gently in the mountain breeze. Carter Workshop was open. By late summer of 2019, the $10 hut at the end of the mountain road had become something nobody at the county sale would have recognized at first glance, though Logan Carter had made certain its old bones were still visible. The restored corrugated metal walls still carried patches of reddish-brown age. A small wooden porch faced the Blue Ridge slopes. The sleeping loft occupied the upper interior, and the south side workshop smelled of sawdust, machine oil, and coffee. Vegetables grew near the cleared spring. Beside Logan's workbench, Rex slept on the low wooden bed beneath Mary's quilted blanket, increasingly convinced that retirement existed primarily for naps. Carter Workshop had become busy enough that Logan occasionally had 3 repairs waiting. Then photographs appeared online. Logan barely noticed until a dark blue SUV climbed the gravel path one afternoon. The man who stepped out introduced himself as Richard Coleman, 51, a regional real estate investor from Asheville. Richard was tall and trim, with carefully cut salt and pepper hair, a square, clean-shaven jaw, pale blue eyes, and the lightly tanned complexion of someone who spent weekends outdoors, but weekdays behind glass. His pressed khaki trousers and white button-down looked almost unnatural beside Logan's grease-stained workbench. Richard was polite, controlled, and accustomed to treating land as mathematics. Years in development had trained him to notice future value before other people noticed present beauty. "This is quite a transformation," Richard said. Logan kept sanding a cabinet door. "It works." Richard had seen photographs shared by someone in Waynesville. Mountain property was attracting interest, he explained, especially parcels with water access and usable structures. Then he gave Logan a number. Logan stopped sanding. It was more money than he had possessed at any single moment since leaving the Navy. Enough for a dependable truck. Enough for an apartment with heat that came from a switch. Enough to put money aside for Rex as veterinary expenses inevitably grew. Enough to remove the quiet fear that one serious accident could send him backward. Richard did not pressure him. Think about it overnight. Logan did. That was the problem. He sat on the porch after dark while Rex slept near the doorway. Logan imagined clean apartment walls, reliable plumbing, and a truck that did not communicate through mysterious dashboard noises. Then another memory surfaced. Parking lots, weekly rentals, rooms belonging to landlords, places where every key in his pocket had ultimately belonged to somebody else. His eyes moved toward Rex. The shepherd's muzzle had grown a little grayer through the summer. One rear leg twitched in sleep beneath Mary's blanket. Logan had spent years learning how quickly anything temporary could disappear. The following morning, he called Richard. "I'm not selling." Richard was quiet briefly. "If you change your mind, the offer stands." "I won't." 3 days later, a county vehicle arrived. The timing was unpleasant enough that Logan immediately wondered whether the two events were connected. But he had no evidence and refused to invent an enemy, simply because fear wanted one. The inspector was Cody Marsh, 34, a lean man with sandy brown hair, short stubble, freckled fair skin, and serious hazel eyes. He had the cautious manner of someone who disliked surprising people with bad news. Cody had grown up helping his father build houses and had become an inspector after seeing a poorly wired rental fire injure a neighboring family when he was 20. It left him strict about safety, but uninterested in punishing people merely for lacking money. "I need to look at the rehabilitation work," Cody explained. Logan's stomach tightened. Walter Hayes had warned him about permits on the day of the sale. Logan had intended to deal with them once he had money. Survival had kept moving the paperwork lower on the list. Cody spent nearly an hour inspecting. The framing was solid. Logan's foundation repairs were sound. The roof work was better than Cody expected. But good craftsmanship did not erase procedure. The old septic system needed professional inspection before approval. Several alterations required retroactive permits. Logan's small electrical setup needed a licensed electrician to certify it, and one chimney component required replacement before colder weather. "Are you condemning it?" Logan asked. Cody shook his head. "I'm telling you what gets you from good work to legal work." The estimated costs still made Logan's chest tighten. That evening, Ben found him staring at the paperwork. "You look like somebody shot your toolbox," Logan explained. Ben read the list. "That's it?" "That's enough. Maybe if you're doing it alone." The next morning, Ben arrived with salvaged material and the phone number of an electrician. Mary Collins appeared later with sandwiches, and more importantly, a list of neighbors willing to help haul supplies up the mountain. The electrician was Samuel Ortiz, 46, a stocky second-generation North Carolinian with short black hair threaded with gray, warm brown skin, a trimmed beard, and patient dark eyes. Samuel had worked electrical construction for more than 20 years and owed Ben several favors involving an ancient fishing boat motor that seemed determined to die every summer. Samuel inspected Logan's work carefully. "You did this yourself?" "Yeah." Samuel nodded. "Annoyingly neat." "Sorry. I'll survive." He charged Logan little more than the inspection cost and helped correct 2 minor issues before signing the required documentation. Then something stranger happened. Ethan Miller arrived and paid in advance for work Logan had not started yet. Another customer did the same. Someone left building supplies. Mary coordinated food so Logan could spend money on permits instead of groceries. Ben found a reasonably priced septic contractor through an old customer. Logan resisted until Ben finally lost patience. "You charge people what they can afford," Ben said. "Turns out this is what they can afford to give back." Logan had no answer. Weeks later, Cody returned. The paperwork was filed. The electrical work was certified. The septic system had passed after servicing. The required safety corrections were complete. Cody signed the finals page. Logan stood on the porch afterward with the approved documents in his hand. Rex rested beside his boots. Behind him was a house people once considered worthless. Around him were repairs made possible by people who once arrived as customers and somehow became something else. Logan looked toward Ben, Mary, and Samuel standing near the workshop. For most of his life, accepting help had felt dangerously close to weakness. Now he understood the difference. Dependence was expecting others to build your life for you. Community was discovering they would stand beside you while you built it yourself. Logan looked down at Rex. "Looks like we're legal." Rex yawned. Ben laughed. "Dog doesn't seem impressed." Logan folded the approved paperwork carefully. "He owns the place. I'm just maintenance." And for once, when everyone laughed, Logan laughed with them. Spring returned to the mountains outside Waynesville in 2020, laying warm sunlight across the Blue Ridge slopes and turning the forest around Carter Workshop green again. Nearly a year had passed since Logan Carter raised his hand over a $10 parcel nobody else wanted. The old corrugated metal hut remained recognizable beneath everything he had repaired. Its weathered walls still carried patches of rust, but the roof was sound. The wooden porch stood level. Vegetables grew near the spring, and the south side workshop was rarely empty for long. On some mornings, a lawn mower waited beside an antique chair, and an old pickup sat farther down the gravel path, all three belonging to people with more need than money. Logan had become comfortable with that arrangement. He charged what people could reasonably afford. Sometimes cash arrived. Sometimes eggs, vegetables, firewood, or coffee appeared instead. A few days each month, he opened the workshop to veterans struggling with civilian life and taught whatever proved useful. How to diagnose a small engine, square a cabinet frame, replace a fuel line, sharpen a hand plane. He did not call it therapy, neither did they. Men simply worked. Logan had learned that hands sometimes found their way home before the rest of a person did. Beside the spring stood something new. During winter, Logan had selected a piece of oak, planed it smooth, and burned Thomas Walker into its face. He set the marker among the moss-covered stones Thomas had arranged more than 40 years earlier. There was no ceremony. Logan simply stood there one cold morning with Rex beside him and thanked a dead man for leaving enough behind to be found. Inside Carter workshop, another small piece of wood hung above the workbench. Thomas Walker, Daniel Reed, Marcus Hill. 3 names. Nothing more. Logan had spent years trying not to remember, because remembering hurt. Eventually, he discovered forgetting hurt differently. It asked him to pretend that men who had shaped his life could disappear simply because their stories had ended before his. He no longer wanted that. Rex, meanwhile, was approaching 10. The German shepherd still carried himself with the quiet dignity of a working dog. His black and tan sable coat remaining thick, amber eyes sharp, ears alert. But silver had spread farther across his muzzle, and his hind legs occasionally betrayed his age after long periods of rest. One bright morning, Logan stood on the porch drinking coffee, when Rex approached from the yard. The dog stopped beneath the low wooden step Logan had built the previous year. Usually Rex climbed it without thought. This time he hesitated. One hind leg shifted, then shifted again. Logan set down his mug. Easy. He descended the step and crouched beside him. Rex looked annoyed. Yeah, I know. You're terrifying. Logan slipped one arm beneath Rex's chest and the other beneath his body, taking enough weight away from the aging legs to help him onto the porch. For an instant, memory struck with such precision that Logan could almost smell dust and smoke again. Rex injured. Daniel gone. Marcus gone. An order to withdraw. Logan refusing to leave one more member of his team behind. He remembered lifting Rex then, younger and heavier with muscle, while his own damaged leg threatened to fold beneath him. No one gets left behind. Back then, Logan thought the promise belonged to war. Now, standing beneath peaceful Carolina sunshine with an old dog leaning against him, he understood promises could outlive the places where they were made. Rex walked slowly into the workshop and settled onto the wooden bed beside Logan's bench. Mary's quilted blanket had faded from washing and sunlight, but Rex still arranged himself upon it as though it were government-issued equipment specifically designed for him. Logan picked up his coffee. Retirement treating you okay? Rex sighed. Tough life. From down the mountain came the familiar rattle of an engine. Ben Parker's pickup appeared first, climbing the gravel road. Another truck followed farther behind, carrying a lawnmower in its bed. Work was coming. So were people. Logan stood in the doorway and looked across what had once been a worthless parcel. He remembered the Ford pickup filling with electrical smoke while he slept, Rex barking, pawing, refusing to let him remain unconscious. He remembered nights when the dog had pressed against him after nightmares. He remembered Rex returning again and again to the mossy stones behind the hut, until Logan discovered the spring Thomas had once cleared. Logan had always told the story one way. He had saved Rex. He had gone back when leaving would have been easier. He had carried the dog out. But Rex had spent the years afterward returning the favor in smaller ways. The dog had awakened him when smoke filled the Ford, stayed beside him when he had no address, watched him repair walls when nobody knew his name, slept beside the door while a $10 ruin slowly became home. Perhaps rescue was rarely one heroic moment. Perhaps sometimes it lasted years. Ben parked near the workshop and climbed out carrying 2 coffees. "Morning." "You're late," Logan said. "I'm 8 minutes early." Standards have slipped. Ben handed him a cup anyway. Behind them, Rex raised his head from the blanket, confirmed that nothing interesting was happening, and went back to sleep. Sunlight moved across the old corrugated walls. Logan looked at the workshop, the garden, Thomas's spring, and the road where people now arrived instead of telling him to leave. Once, the county could not find anyone willing to pay $10 for this place. Once, Logan had believed the same thing about himself. That damage eventually became the only thing people saw. He knew better now. Worth was not always what remained after something broke. Sometimes it was what could still be built from the pieces. Logan reached down and rested a hand on Rex's silvering head. Family, he finally understood, was not always blood. Sometimes it was whoever stayed when there was nothing left to offer, whoever came looking when the rest of the world walked away, whoever waited beside the door until a lost man finally found his way home. Years earlier, Logan had carried Rex out and promised no one would be left behind. In the end, neither of them had been. Sometimes God's miracles do not arrive as open doors, sudden wealth, or the return of everything we have lost. Sometimes they arrive quietly. A $10 piece of forgotten land, an old dog who refuses to leave our side, or strangers who slowly become family. Logan and Rex remind us that being broken does not mean being without value. In everyday life, we may lose people, homes, plans, and even the person we once believed we would become. But perhaps God does not always restore the old life. Sometimes He gives us the strength, the people, and the smallest opportunity to build a new one. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what Logan and Rex's journey meant to you. Please subscribe for more stories of loyalty, second chances, and unexpected grace. May God bless you, protect your family, and remind you that even on the loneliest road, you are never beyond the reach of a new beginning.